Hello, welcome to Insight for today. Hope everyone is doing well. One of the message insight for today that came to mind is men and mental health and loneliness. How do we handle those areas and things that cause mental issues in men? Um, there are tendency for men to have the social isolation, just hiding away from the issues, and which later on can cause mental illness and create other issues for men. So, what do we do about this? And in my own perspective, from my experience, it's becoming an epidemic in men as men age. We tend to isolate more and just be in our own cocoon and not interact with other men. So, what can we do about this issue? One, I think we need a community. A community will be a place where you can come to and share and just learn and grow together and deal with those issues that are maybe pending that we have not addressed. So my insight for us today as men is to not isolate ourselves, find a community and get involved. Also, spiritually talking in terms of my Christian background, prayer is another good thing to do. When you have a group of men that you pray with and you can share and you can build a brotherhood together, it helps a lot with dealing with mental health. And that will be it for today, folks. Thank you for joining Insight for today. We'll see you on the next one.
Label.
The study does point out a couple things.
First, there are single item measurement tools,
These are simple questions like, I feel completely alone,
but the researchers suggest these might underestimate it.
because of that reluctance to self report,
Then there are the multidimensional scales,
like the Dion Gearveld scale.
which is more detailed,
That scale tries to get a fuller picture.
but its application to older adults has been questioned.
What's fascinating here is, regardless of the method,
Whether they used a simple question or a complex scale.
the connection between loneliness and mental health was strong.
So even with potential underreporting,
The impact of lacking social connections still shows.
that really speaks to the significance of the issue.
And to your point about it becoming an epidemic,
The study highlights some coping mechanisms,
like avoidance, numbing, and escape behaviors.
which can impair their ability to self-disclose,
Those externalizing symptoms like anger,
might negatively impact interpersonal relationships.
increasing feelings of loneliness.
Now, location of the study played a role.
Specifically, the studies from Heads Up Guys.
Yes, that's the one we noted earlier,
Those studies showed a stronger connection.
compared to those with more general samples.
Men already dealing with mental health might seek resources,
So those study groups likely had more challenges.
which could make the link appear more pronounced.
It's a bit of a self-selecting group.
It highlights the value of targeted resources for men.
Okay, so we've looked at some data,
Next, we can consider the Forged video.
exploring why some men become emotionally distant.
They presented a couple of key ideas.
Experiences in childhood was one.
Men who didn't experience affection growing up.
Might learn to be less open and compassionate.
It's a learned pattern of behavior.
Then trauma experienced in adulthood is another one,
They use the term counter biasness
where guys develop opposite behaviors,
as a response to what caused them pain.
like someone avoiding deep connections after being hurt.
That makes sense on an emotional level.
They described it as a type of avoidant attachment.
Losing someone close, a difficult breakup.
Those past hurts can teach you to put up barriers.
But those walls can also isolate.
Even tough guys need connection.
It takes time, maturity, and healing.
So it's a constant oh yeah, let's hear it.
So let's explore more and go deeper in that social isolation when men isolate themselves and even though they have things that they're going through. Can we kind of share some insights on that?
Absolutely, David. Let's delve deeper into that.
It's a really important aspect to consider.
You're right, even when men are facing difficulties.
There can be a tendency to withdraw socially.
The study we looked at touched on this a bit.
Remember the idea of discrepancy strain?
That feeling when your social connections don't match.
What you desire, what you think they should be.
The paper suggested that to manage that distress,
Some men might actually distance themselves,
it's almost a protective mechanism in the short term.
but as we mentioned, it can backfire.
It can intensify those feelings of loneliness.
That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
It's a cycle where the solution worsens the problem.
And those traditional masculine norms play a role here too.
That pressure to be self reliant and not show vulnerability.
It can make it.
Yep, go on.
So you mentioned something that kind of strike the point to me here about how men distance themselves.
You have a thought on that. Please go on.
Yeah, we're all ears, David. What resonated with you?
We were just touching on how that pressure to be strong,
Can make it hard for guys to admit they're struggling.
and that can definitely lead to isolating themselves,
It's almost like they feel they need to handle it alone.
which, as we've seen, can really deepen the issue.
That rings true, doesn't it? That feeling of needing to be self-sufficient.
Absolutely. And that's something the Forged video explores.
It talks about how those early experiences,
Or later traumas can build up those walls.
making that isolation feel like the safer option.
Oh, yeah,
All right. The trauma part of it, I think, is very important that we deal kind of explore that deeper and find out how those trauma become a big issue in men and as they grow even to older age.
You're absolutely right, David. Let's unpack this.
Trauma can have a profound and lasting impact.
The Forged video really highlighted this,
That idea of a counter biasness response,
where a painful experience leads to an opposite behavior.
for instance, withdrawing after betrayal.
That becomes almost a protective mechanism.
But it can solidify into long-term isolation,
The video mentioned avoidant attachment.
where forming close bonds becomes difficult.
That initial trauma can shape future relationships.
Even if the individual consciously wants connection.
There's that ingrained fear of being hurt again.
And as men age, these patterns can become deeply rooted
The video suggested it takes time and often answers
to those unresolved questions to start healing.
without addressing the root trauma.
That emotional distance can perfect.
It's a significant factor in that feeling of loneliness.
It ties into what the first study mentioned too.
About men potentially leading more insular lives.
Trauma can certainly contribute to that,
Now, shifting slightly, the mensgroup.org document,
offers a different perspective on finding strength,
through spiritual connection and faith,
a sense of belonging within a community.
which could potentially counteract some of that isolation.
And Chris Williamson's video brought up capability.
When men feel they aren't meeting certain standards,
That can also trigger a withdrawal response.
almost as a way to avoid feeling inadequate.
So trauma is definitely a key piece of this puzzle,
It can create deep-seated barriers to connection.
which unfortunately can fuel that loneliness over time.
Thanks for emphasizing that important point, David.
It really helps to understand the depths of this issue.
We appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
It's been another insightful conversation.
We hope you found this exploration valuable.
Join us next time for more discussions.
Have a thoughtful rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time. So there we have it. Key things for men with our mental health. It's key for us to pay attention to that, to not allow social isolation, depression, worry, and all sort of things that come in together to create that trauma become something that has a long-lasting effect on our mental health. And one other thing that we will explore further in this topic is about loneliness. Men, how men fall into being lonely, even though they have many people around them, friends that they can build friendship with, but we have this sense of isolation that we isolate ourselves, and then we end up getting depressed and getting lonely. So these are the things that are very important to address for our mental health. So join us next time as we explore and look deeper into this. This is Insight for today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now.